Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. So glad you're here. I want to remind you of a few things. Please tell your friends and family about this podcast because that's the way we're going to get it out in the world. And it's a voice of hope and awakening. And in this crazy, crazy world that we're living in, what more do we need other than some hope and some inspiration for awakening? And I love this work that I'm doing because I talk to the most interesting people and people who from all facets of life who've had so many different experiences of the divine in so many different ways, so many lenses of the divine God. And I just know that I'm inspired by every one of them. And I hope that you are too. I want to remind you that I am co-organizing a retreat at Unity Village this year. It'll be October 28th through 31st. And it is a whole planet spirituality retreat. And you can go to thespiritualforum.org/retreat to learn about that. You can also go to the website to donate because we do have expenses. And you can also go to the website to sign up for our newsletter and get on the communication train with the Spiritual Forum. So now let me introduce my guest today. Anissa Amason's awakening journey became the focus of her life in 2018 after a mystical experience silenced her incessant suicidal thoughts. She spent the last 5 years researching and exploring the nature of the presence that brought her such peace and love into her awareness, and she experimented with many tools and modalities to tap into that inner mystical reality. Out of her inquiry, Anissa founded the Meditation Lounge to help others cultivate their own capacity for healing and gain clarity and connection to their unique soul guidance. She's a gifted intuitive channel, energy healer, and a national board certified health and wellness coach. Anissa is with us today to share her story and bring hope and light to dark spaces. In a world where suicide and mental illness is on the rise and continually stigmatized, she believes it is crucial to begin to talk about it and bring the darkness into the light. And I completely agree. And that's why I have Anissa on today. So welcome, Anissa Amason.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. So like I do with all of my guests, I would love to hear about this story. You emailed me with your story and I was instantly captivated. It was like, this is so interesting. I've not heard this story before. Everybody has a unique story and yours is really unique. And I just feel the divine God showed up for you in a really, really unique way. So you can go back as far as you want in your life.
Sure.
But tell us what you have to tell us.
Yeah, I guess my kind of battle is not really a word that I don't know what the right word is. Like, I don't necessarily say battle with depression. Mm-hmm. I just think it was literally a state of mind for me. And it started when I was quite young. Like a lot of people, I have a tremendous amount of trauma in my childhood. And so there were just a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, terror, things like that. And so I think that predisposed me to having some of these depressive tendencies. They kind of waned throughout my life. I would have some periods that were very dark and other periods that were quite normal. And some of those would be suicidal. There were times I don't even know if I would call it an attempt. I did take a bottle of Tylenol when I was probably in the 8th grade, and then, immediately following went and threw it up. So some of those kind of, it will be better if you're not here, mm-hmm. messages are something that have been a companion of mine periodically throughout my life. In 2018, for no particular reason, those thoughts were incessant. They were like locusts in my mind. It was something that didn't seem to be linked to any particular trigger. I had a stressful moments, but it wasn't as if there was some overarching thing that was causing me to feel suicidal. And these were daily. It would be for no reason. I would just be doing nothing. And these urges these urges for suicide would kind of come over me and wash over me. And the messages were like a loop, a tape on loop daily, with ideas of how you could do it, or things would be better if you weren't here, or things like that. But at the same time, the one thing that was different is I could recognize that this was a thought that I was having. And I didn't feel there was a space between the thoughts that were occurring and myself kind of witnessing the thoughts. So I wasn't attached to them in a way where I felt depressed.
Interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. So that was something that was completely different from maybe more in my teenage years, where I really was in a dark space and really wanting to take myself out of my daily experience. This was not like that. What became the horrible part of it is that I couldn't get them to stop. I was separate from them, but they were so loud. They were drowning out normal living because they were so loud and incessant. And I was really getting to my wit's end in just the noise. It would be like being in the middle of a traffic jam or with sirens blaring. It was that loud in my head, constant, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself.
Wow.
And there was one particular morning where I was a fitness instructor, and I was on the way to teach a class, and they were so loud as normal. I started to kind of break down while I was driving, and there was a moment where I was coming towards the underpass, and there was kind of the concrete partitions that come out. And I had this moment where I thought, these thoughts, this is going to be in my head all the time. It's never going to stop. I'm never going to have any peace. I'm never going to have any peace. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to drive into that. I'm just going to drive into that. And then I won't have to listen to it anymore. And I pulled over into a supermarket parking lot and stopped my car and literally started screaming at, I guess, God, please, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to kill myself, but I don't know what else to do because it won't stop. And I was, hysterical. I was crying. I was screaming. I was just like my insides were turning out, just begging for the noise to stop. And really also at the same time, a little bit of threatening bargaining, like, if you don't help me make this stop, I'm going to do it, type of thing. And I guess that probably went on for, I don't know, a few minutes, enough to where, I had things running out my nose and down onto my body. And then all of a sudden, everything stopped. There was an absolute quiet. And it was quiet in a way where there was no thought. Nothing was coming in. And I was elevated in this space of huge expansion. I don't say that it was an out-of-body experience. I've had one of those in my lifetime, and it was not that. I was in my body, but I was also at the same time in the presence of something that was pure peace and pure love. And I didn't hear, it wasn't like it said anything to me, the sensations of the presence is what spoke to me. And I sat there, needless to say, I didn't show up to teach my class that day, but I sat there in the car just feeling illuminated and feeling enraptured. I was cradled in this presence that was, I don't know if you have children, but I have 5 children. And when my first child was born, that sense of love and absolute surrender to this little person, it was 1,000 times greater than that.
Wow.
It was resting in this absolute okayness. And following that experience, I would say I was probably maybe about a day and a half still kind of a little bit milking that kind of mystical sensation. And then after that, life kind of went back to life, but without those thoughts. I've never had that thought again since that day. It has never come into my experience. Just never.
Wow. Okay. Let's pause for just a minute because I've got a bunch of questions,
Sure.
things I want to talk about. First, I'm fascinated by your analogy of the locusts. I think that's really, really interesting because it actually makes me wonder if the biblical locusts weren't actually physical locusts, but like thoughts that were just people were obsessing over, or something that was entering their mind. I think that was really interesting, the buzzing and the constancy and you can't get them off, and there's so many of them. It's a really interesting analogy. It kind of made me wonder about that.
And they're a destroyer.
And their destroyer. Yes.
Yep.
Right. Really good analogy. I'm interested in, okay, there's a few things I'm going to talk about. The nature of the voices or the thoughts, the way that you were able to see them as separate from you. And then I want to talk about the actual experience of the mystical experience. But first, what do you think? I'm thinking that, in more ancient days, people would say that's the devil, that's Satan, whispering into you or telling you or talking to you. And I know people today who would say that these are fourth dimensional beings who are present with us in our reality, but they're latching on to trauma points. You said you had trauma as a child, and they're able to latch on to these trauma points and kind of disconnect our soul from our bodies. So I know those are two different schools of thoughts, because I doubt these are just thoughts that you were actually making up because you had absolutely no control over them. But I'm really interested in what your thoughts are on it.
That's interesting. It's when you say that, it makes me think that yes, probably it was something like that, because they were very different. This particular time was very distinctive from what I experienced like during my teenage years. That very much felt like more of something that was a part of me, right?
Yeah, like
I was
teenage
depressed.
angst or,
Yes, and just other the dysfunction in my family of origin, some of the things that were occurring in my home were completely linked to the way that I was feeling and the desire to die. This was different. This felt like other.
Like another entity.
And yet, yes, it really did. And I have a very good friend who in 2014 did commit suicide. And then I think I may have shared with you in my email, which was part of the reason with email, is that her son, the week prior, I had found out that he had also committed suicide. And I sometimes wonder, especially with her, if it wasn't the same kind of thing, if there wasn't literally like something whispering to her, because it was very out of character. Even though she had some of the same kind of traumas that I did, she wasn't in that space at that time. So I have not really considered that until you just posed it to me that way, although I certainly could see that, and even Eckhart Tolle kind of speaks about the pain body. I don't know if you're
Right.
familiar
I
with his
am.
work.
It's the same kind of
Hmm.
general idea.
Yes. And he speaks about even there being the possibility of entities and things like that that can gravitate to kind of that lower vibration
Yeah.
and attach. Um, because this felt so different and it also felt separate. And to me, that was really grace. The fact that I did not take it as myself, I really feel was a grace from God, that I could see that there was a separation between what was telling me and who I was.
Yes, that is grace. That's so interesting. And I know, like meditation, in
Mm-hmm.
meditation, people think, well, I can't meditate because I can't get rid of my thoughts. And it's not about getting rid of your thoughts. It's about
Right,
being able to separate yourself from your thoughts so that you
right.
can observe your thoughts and recognize that you are not your thoughts. And even recognize it's a mental activity. So just be with that.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea, or the fact that you could stand apart from it and be able to see it as not yourself. Did you ever engage with the thoughts or the voices, or, I mean, were they actual voices? Or, I mean,
Oh,
I
yes.
okay. All
But
right.
it didn't sound like a different voice than my own.
Okay. I get it.
Right. It was other, but yes, they were thoughts. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't have said it was me listening to, it wasn't as if a voice was talking to me.
Right.
It also doesn't sound anything like when I'm channeling. That's when I'm doing psychic work,
Okay.
nothing like what that voice was. This one
Okay.
was very much chatter in my own, um, like something on repeat within my
Okay.
kind of brain.
Right. So, right. It's like a tape that's going
Hmm.
over and over and over again. It's a torture
Hmm.
chamber.
Mm,
So,
yes.
and I'm asking you these questions, not to, I'm asking these questions because I think that other people may have these experiences. And if
Mhm.
you're able to articulate what it was for you, somebody else may go, you know what? That sounds so familiar. That doesn't mean it would be that way for everybody. But
Right.
I think it's always helpful to really dig into, your experience and share it. Even if you think you're the only person in the world who had it, you may be the only person in the world who had this experience. You may be one of millions of people
Hmm.
who've had this, and just sharing your story will, I think, help flush that out for people. Um, so
Definitely. And I also think too that even at the time when I was a teenager having those experiences, that if there would have been someone that I had heard that, you're not your thoughts,
right.
that these are just thoughts that you're having. And even the narrative around my circumstance, my living circumstance at the time was just that, a narrative. And I think that, yes, there were real things that were happening. But if I would have known that me experiencing thoughts is a normal thing, and that even some of the thoughts, the suicidal thoughts, even as a teenager, had I known that I'm not my thinking patterns, that I am something separate from that, maybe that would create enough of a gap that someone could reach out for help.
Right.
Instead of I feel this way, it could be I'm having these thoughts that are worrying me.
Right.
And even that could create some distance. I need to get some help with my thinking.
Right. Right. And even these thoughts are having me. It's almost like they're kind of latching on to
Mhm,
you,
mhm.
also. So yeah, we are separate from our thought. We're separate from our thoughts. And that's why we have so much power. I mean, we can create with our thoughts. We can change our thoughts. We're just so used to keeping the same thoughts.
Right.
We're so used to keeping the same habits and patterns and everything. It's like over and over and over again, and then we think that's us. But we can
Yes.
change anything. We can change every habit,
Yes.
everything. We can change the way we think. We can change the way we live. We can create. So this is a really extreme example of that. So what
Yep.
you got to a place, though, you got to this place where you're kind of, you said, well, you said you want to drive into it. Is that what you
Mhm.
said? Drive into
Yep.
it. And that's
Yep.
such an interesting metaphor also, because, there are people who drive into walls in their
Mhm.
suicide attempt, but you were driving into the pain of it, or the angst of it. Is that correct?
I I definitely reached a point where for me it was like a precipice.
Uh-huh.
I was literally standing
Oh gosh, I know what
on
this
an
feeling is like. Yeah.
edge
Yeah.
where I I was almost going to let it take me, where I was to the place where if it didn't stop, I wasn't going to be able to hear the difference between it and myself anymore
Okay.
if
That's
it didn't
interesting.
stop.
That's interesting that you could realize that.
That's why I pulled over and
Right.
was, if I could have been on my knees in my car, which I wasn't, but if I could have been, that's literally what I was. I felt like it was my last ditch attempt to not succumb to the voice.
Okay. Okay. And then you yelled into it, or you yelled at God, or did
Mhm.
you so forgive me if I missed it, because I'm listening to so much when you're speaking, but did you ask for it to be taken away, or did you just say, what the heck, God,
Oh, no, I asked.
Okay.
I was super specific, like, "Please, please, please make it stop." I
Yeah.
just kept saying that over and over again, "Make it stop. Please make it stop. Please, please, please make it stop. I can't take it anymore."
Okay. So you had hit a bottom and you made a request. It's like, ask and it will be given. And this is important. This is why I wanted to flesh this out too, because we live in misery a lot of the time. We live in our suffering, and we don't think to ask. We don't think to ask, help me get out of this.
Mhm.
And even in unity, I'm a unity minister. I'm also an interfaith minister, but we do a lot of affirmative prayer where we're affirming our truth. Sometimes, though, you just got to go, throw up your arms and say, Holy Spirit, help me,
Yeah.
and I found with myself that I'm not in that place in my life, but there are times where my thoughts, my attention is too attached to the outer world. Either
Mm.
stuff is going on that I'm worried about or concerned about, or I'm just thinking a lot, or I've got a lot of activity. And I know that that is not the holy space where I want to be. And
Mhm.
so there are times in my own life where I recognize that I am too attached to stuff that's out there. And my mind may be racing or on some sort of a loop like yours was, not as extreme, but I ask, I say, Holy Spirit, I ask the Holy Spirit, please wipe my mind clean. And what's so
Mm.
interesting is it gets wiped clean. I mean, it wiped clean. And so this is a smaller example of that ask, but I'm hoping everybody who's listening can really get that this is the thing to do when we are overtaken by thoughts, and particularly the dark thoughts that you were.
Yeah, and I think too, like, even, even if you're asking God or you're asking Holy Spirit, that you can also ask people because you never know who's going to be that Christ presence in your life,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
And especially if you're someone who's struggling with suicidal thinking, and I know that there's so much stigma, right? I know that there's shame that comes with that, especially if your life seems to be okay and you can't, there's no reason, no explanation for those kinds of thoughts. There's a lot of shame in that. Like
Yeah.
going to someone and saying, you know what, I'm really having some suicidal thoughts here and I need some help. That takes a tremendous amount of courage. So whether you're screaming in your car, losing it to God, or you need to reach out to someone and just find someone that you trust to be able to ask for the help because you don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah. And well, God shows up in people too, for
Oh, for
sure.
sure.
Yeah. And I get what you're saying though, because especially if your life is from all exterior appearances, looks like things are going okay. That's not where everybody who's suicidal is, but a lot of people are. And the response I would think that a lot of people would have is, oh, come on. Look at all the good look. What do you think? There's no way. Look, you've got a wife and a boat and a job, or, whatever. What's
Right.
with it? I think there would definitely be an intolerance or an inability to see why somebody would be having those thoughts when everything looks like a great life.
Right. Yes, definitely. And in my case, I didn't even want to kill myself. Like I was not
right.
feeling that at the time. It was just this noise telling me to do it.
Yeah. So almost like the noise was miserable enough that, to get rid of it, you kind of want to
Yes.
do what it says to do.
Yes.
But I want to go back to this idea of people showing up, because I do think it's also important for us and everybody who's listening to take note of how we can be the Christ light for other people anytime they're in any kind of trouble, time they're in any problem situation they may have, and then particularly if they're having some suicidal thoughts, and to not minimize it and not try to detract from it. Because I think what happens is a lot of people just can't be with that themselves, like,
for sure.
I can't be with that. So, you've got to stop having that thought because I can't deal with it. And how can we be this space, this container for other people, so that when so first of all, that we are a person that they would want to come to. And then second of all, if they come to us, we can be a container for their world, what they want to share. And I don't know if people would know what to say, though, or what to do if someone came to them that was suicidal. But I would think at least just listening.
Yeah, I think for me that if at that point, if I had gone to someone or at any time, I think what I would have wanted to hear was, wow, that must be really hard. And why don't we make a call together? Why don't we let's look into some resources together, because this is something that I know that we can get you some help with. And having someone offer to walk me through the next steps, because me as a person, I'm not equipped to be that. I'm not a professional. That's not within my scope of practice, even as a health coach, right? To deal with anything like that. But I would have think that anyone who is telling you that they're having these types of thoughts, that might be something helpful. Let's find some resources together. Let me walk with you to get you the resources that you need.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, because I do know that people who have friends or family that commit suicide, they're left with all this guilt of what could they have done. And even then they may not have been able to do anything, but that at least gives some people some things to, an approach to take. All right, so let's go back to your car and your experience of the mystery that I think it's interesting that you compare it to that giving birth, and that because that's a mystical experience. So it was so much vaster than that. So it almost sounds like it's a the parting of the seas kind of experience, like Moses had in Exodus. It's like it was so supernatural and something just astonishing. So what was that?
Yeah. To me, the experience that I was having is what Christ says when the disciples ask him, where, he says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not there. It's not here. It's not, wherever. It's within you. And it's not just within me. It's within all of us. Right. I was having a moment where I was experiencing that. I was having a visceral, felt experience of the kingdom of heaven within.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and what was so wonderful is that's what set my trajectory. Just the exact right books landed in my lap shortly following that experience, just the exact right, and in everything, for me to be able to study a little bit more of mysticism and understand here and here what my experience had been. And the reason why I founded the meditation lounge is because that's what I call that space within me. I'm not talking about a space out here. The meditation lounge is not out here.
Mm-hmm.
It's in here. That is my space. And I'm blessed enough and have enough grace that I really do have access to it anytime that I want. Not maybe on the complete silent level like I did that way, but I can access it anytime that I want. And then I help other people sense into that same space within themselves.
Okay, great. So let's talk about then what happened next.
Mm-hmm.
Your path to founding the meditation lounge and what you're doing for people there.
So following that experience, the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. I don't know if you've read that book.
I have not.
And The Untethered Soul.
Oh, I love that one.
Okay, so he wrote both.
Okay.
The surrender experience, the surrender experiment is how he surrendered literally his whole life beyond the thinking mind, right? So here, right when I was like, I don't know what all this thought was, what was that just happened? Oh my gosh, how do I keep that? Where did that go? What was that? All of these things that are coming through. And then I find this book that is all about you are not your thoughts. Oh.
And is that the first time you heard it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh, and I had done meditation throughout my life. It was very much, well, not throughout my life, since my 20s. It was very much more of a systematic approach rather than this kind of mystical sit with whatever approach type thing. So that was one book, and huge aha moments with that. I also found Sounds True, which is a publishing house, and I started taking numerous courses, online courses and things through Sounds True. Again, learning more. I started reading Teresa Avila, and the oh my gosh, why am I having like a moment where the
That's
name,
okay.
the castle, the interior castle.
Okay.
Some of the Mary Magdalene Gospels as well, some of the Gospel of Thomas, and some other non-canonical Gospels that are very much more kind of that esoteric.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to understand, I started to have an understanding of our true nature, and that what I was experiencing was my true nature. And I felt really weird. I felt like I was a really weird person then, because I was so almost obsessive about it. Like I couldn't read enough books. I couldn't study enough. I couldn't, it was literally the singular focus of my life pretty much. And I started to find community of other kind of weird girls like myself.
Weird people who are being their true self.
Mm-hmm, yeah, or just, would maybe
in the inquiry.
Yeah, didn't look at me cross-eyed if I wanted to talk about what mysticism was, or I wanted to talk about some of the books that I was reading or some of my experiences. And so I found some like-minded people who helped me to feel safe to talk about it and to listen to their experiences. And through that shared storytelling, really finding common ground. And I thought, with my health coach certification, mindfulness had been part of that. That was part of the program that I took at Emory University. And I thought, I think I want to do more of this. I'd always been psychic since a very little girl. And I always had been very open to energy and things like that. So I thought, there's got to be something to this. There obviously the place that I sat in that's within my body is not this meat sack. It's not my bones and my skin and all this. So what is that, right? What is the nature of our true self? Where is that housed within this physical form? What is my spirit? What is the greater spirit? How are they all connected? How can I be connected to you? How can I be connected to God? How is this all wrapped into one? And how can I help?
Big service.
Yes. And so through that, it was actually in the pandemic at my work, which is regular old corporate America. I thought, what, maybe it would be a neat idea if I could just offer 15-minute mindfulness sessions once a week through Zoom, and whoever in the organization wants to join. I told the powers that be that, I'm a board certified health coach. I have some experience in this. I'm not just someone not that you can't just be someone. I just want to say that the letters behind my name just make other people feel comfortable. It doesn't
especially in corporate America.
Yeah, 100%. Well, they let me do it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of me dipping my toe into this space of being a vessel for helping others to feel that sense of peace that I felt that day, and to become embodied in their greater soma. And once I kind of started that engine going, it kind of picked up some speed. So I quickly veered away from the corporate arena so that I could get more into the energy healing and some of the other things that light me up. I happen to love the archetypal images and tarot and oracle cards and things like that as a tool. So I kind of veered that way a little bit, and started my online community, the Meditation Lounge, and it's been lovely.
Yeah, let me ask you a couple of questions. Did you leave corporate America?
Oh no, I'm sitting here right now in my office.
Okay. All right.
Nope, not at all.
You're still in corporate America, but you
100%.
You started dipping your toe in this other area, and as you started going in that direction, all sorts of things started coming for you. So that must have validated that this is a path
100%.
that you're being inspired to do.
And I'm completely outed here. Everyone here knows that I do energy healing. I am my full self at work. I just don't do things here that would not be part of their value system, because that's not fair. Right. Yeah. I can't on behalf of that, but I have plenty of people that will come by my desk and be like, can you just do that thing that you do for just a couple of minutes? Can I have some Reiki for just a couple of minutes? I'm like, sure, let's just go sit in there, and, I'll put my hand on their back, and they'll, drop into their body a little bit more. They'll start to feel their feet a little bit more. Their breath will kind of deepen a little bit more, and they'll walk away feeling better.
Hopefully corporate America will catch on and have people like you on staff specifically for that reason, because I think some corporations have, coaches or whatnot on staff, or maybe that's just something I see on TV, but wouldn't that be great? I remember I was in corporate America for about 20 years, long time ago. And the best that we could do they could do is allow these massage therapists to come in and do chair massages over our lunch hour if we wanted to. So once a week I would do that for 30 minutes, and it was amazing. But to have an energy healer on staff would be really amazing. Yeah. But why not? Because everyone's going to be more productive. Everyone's going to be happier, Yeah. I love that they accept you. And I love that you can, I particularly love that you don't have to put yourself away when you come to corporate America, like, take and then leave corporate America and put on your I'm me suit and or put on your corporate suit and all that, because I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people do feel like they can't be their true selves at work. They have to pretend, they have to put on their persona. We all have a persona, but they put on their work persona. And there's, every time we do that, there's a little bit of death, I think, of our soul,
Yes.
or detachment, or something happens in our souls. And our
Mhm.
souls are like being betrayed in some way, because we're here to be us. We're not here to be someone else. So the
Correct.
fact that you can be an energy healer and a psychic and,
Mhm.
everything else that you are.
And still be do my corporate job too. But yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, that is.
It's like when Gary Zukav says in The Seat of the Soul that when the personality comes to serve the soul, that's authentic empowerment. And I really feel like, at my day job, right, I can still show up in authentic empowerment, and it's quite lovely.
Wow. And what kind of work is it?
I'm an executive assistant. I support 2 C-level
Okay.
executives.
And is a
Yeah.
corporation like manufacturing, services, computing?
No, we're in the food.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
we're like a restaurant group.
Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
curious. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter, but
Yeah.
it is interesting. So,
Oh, yes, and I tell my boss all the time that how much I value that I'm allowed to be my whole self at work, and that I am so grateful that that even if my views are not his views or anybody else's views, that I'm respected and honored as my autonomous self, and it's very much appreciated. And I know how fortunate I am.
well, I mean, it's just a natural way that everything should be. It shouldn't be
Hmm.
the exception.
Right.
We ought to be able to have completely different views, completely different experiences, worldviews, religions, ideas on family, spiritual experiences, and still be able to be
Right.
ourselves. And wouldn't that be great if that became
Yes.
a value of corporations, that we're a
Yeah.
place where everybody's accepted? We don't care about your politics. We don't care about your
Right.
religion. We don't care about, we just care about you
Right.
being you.
Right. Yep. So,
Amazing.
and I don't know if that's true for everyone across the board in the organization. I just know for sure for me, it's been my experience and it's been wonderful.
Well,
So,
it's also, I think, to your credit, because I think, like I said before, I think so many people don't think that it's safe to be themselves at
mhm,
work. So they don't even
mhm,
want to try. And so
mhm,
they really put on the work suit. They really put on the image, because
right.
they don't have the courage, because it does take courage. It takes courage in our world to be our to let our soul shine, to be our own selves.
100%. And I also think that whatever touched me that day, right? Whatever touched me that day, that then, uh, as long as I kept showing up to honor it, like it stayed open. Not that I'm open all the time, and not that I don't get triggered, and not that I don't have moments where I'm probably a real pain in the patootie or whatever, but like we all are. But because I've nurtured that space, that becomes what sits at my cube. And
Okay.
so when that becomes what's riding up in the elevator, the non-physical self, when that becomes what's having conversation, I now have these high level executives that will ask me my opinion on something, that
Mhm.
will say, I'm having this conversation later, and I would really just like to know, what do you think of that? What would you do in that circumstance? And that's not because, trust me, that's not because I'm an admin. They're not coming to me because
Right.
I'm an admin.
Right.
They're coming to me because there's something else there.
Right.
And that something else is not just in me, it's in everyone. It's just that in me, it's wide open.
Right. And they can see it in you.
Yes.
And
And they can sense it.
right. And that's
Hmm.
why it's so important for us all to be who we are in the world, because it inspires others to see what's possible. That
Mm.
inspires others to see, oh, I want some of that. And the answer is, you
Yes.
have it all. There's
Right.
nothing you need to do. It's like, just, be. But it sounds like the meditation lounge
Hmm.
helps people
Yes.
to become, or to access, or to be themselves. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you do there?
Sure. Sure. So that space is very much kind of somatic meditation. So it helps people to, w- while I'm offering the kind of healing transmission meditations, that's part of that community. I offer these weekly recordings. It is helping others to access that point within them. So I'm just providing a reflection of what's already there. I'm just providing a portal into that direct experience within themselves. One of the ladies that's in the community that happens to have cancer, and when her first meditation, this one was curated just for her, and I was going into, it sounds so weird, but I'm just going to be, this is what it is. It's weird,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm going into her etheric body,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm walking her through, be in that deep belly space. And then now, okay, you may sense, I invite you to sense this perception, right? And I'll give very direct, sensational cues. And she sent me an email afterwards, and she said, oh my gosh, the second you had the light hit the crown of my head, and then there was the swirl that when she said, everything that you were talking about, I was feeling in my body as you were saying it, these things were happening. Or sometimes I'll start talking about where something is, and someone will say, how did you know that that's where I was feeling? And I said, I don't know how I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to know how I know, because that's the beauty of mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
is the cloud of unknowing. That's another ancient kind of, it's a book, The Cloud of Unknowing.
It's a great book too.
It is, yes. I don't want to know. I don't want to conceptualize this. I just know that when Michael Singer talks about that the nature of our soul is bliss, joy, beauty, love, that is the full expression. And the reason why we don't experience it is because of all of the garbage experiences that we've kind of piled in there and held on to.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, we're kids, we don't do it on purpose, but whatever. And he says that, when there's a stream and there's rapids in the stream, that's because there's all these rocks that are underneath that's causing the rapids. And he says that if you want it to be calm, all you have to do is take the rocks out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to look at them, talk about them, describe them, dig them up. You don't have
Figure
to do
out where
anything.
they come from.
You don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
You just have to remove them. So when I'm doing my healing transmissions, what we're doing is just removing the blocks. We're just removing the rocks. And they're, wherever they are in the body, and we shift, and then all of a sudden they just kind of bubble up, just like carbonation, and they leave the body. And then when you're done, you feel a little bit better. And so whether we're working with imagery like a dove, sometimes images will come in that we'll work with. Sometimes this past week, following Friday's decision, when I was doing this week's, I was so worried. I didn't know what I was going to record because I felt so off. I didn't know where I was, and all of a sudden, love just came in. Mm-hmm. There was this beautiful rose quartz crystal, and it just came in, and I thought, yes, of course. Why would it not be love? Of mm-hmm. course, it's love. And so that's what the meditation lounge is. It's a space where we do these weekly meditation healings. There's also a library. It's a membership community. There's also a library of regular meditations, which are also super useful. There are card spreads that go with the healings so that people can go deeper into the archetypal things behind maybe some of what's coming through for them, because sometimes it is helpful to have some understanding. But I don't think that's the end all be all. We just want to take the rocks out so that we can experience our true self.
I really do. I really do like that idea, because I think people think they do need to pull the rocks up and look at them and examine them and figure out where they came from and how long has this rock been here? What did I do to make it be here? And all of that doesn't matter to spirit. So is your meditation lounge, is
Mhm.
it virtual? Is it something that,
Uh-huh. That
okay,
was
so
virtual.
I don't have to
I wish
be.
it was a brick and mortar. That would be so great. Someday maybe, but yeah, no, it's a virtual space. I have
Okay.
a platform, a membership platform. Yep.
Okay. And do people meet together in a group and meditate, or is it you're on
We
your
do.
own path?
Yeah, every week they get a recording, but once a month we come together live via Zoom and do a live kind of a workshop with the healing and other things as well as a live where I'll pull a card for everyone in the group one at a time, and I'll psychically channel something individual for them at that moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit? You said you had psychic experiences when
Hmm.
you were a child.
Hmm.
And so what
Yeah.
was that? What was that? And what did you do with it?
Oh
And what did you
gosh.
think about it?
I used to tell my mom all the time when people were calling before the phone would ring, and she would, I would, that kind of thing. So I would have precognition type things like that. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know everybody didn't do that. I used to hear like crazy stuff, like even when I'd be a teenager, I would hear like silly things. Like I can remember one particular day I heard someone singing, "Do you know the Muffin Man?" And I'm like, that's so weird. And then somebody walked by going, "Do you know the Muffin?" I'm like, well, that's just silly, right? So it's gotten to be where it's less silly and more useful.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it's tremendously fun for me. It's when I'm playing in that space, it's very expanding for me. So it feels really good physically to me when I'm doing that type of work. And the way that it's definitely not fortune telling. This feels much more like, I kind of giggle. It's almost like with the health coaching thing. It's almost like cosmic coaching, where there's always an element of your deeper wisdom is speaking to you about how you could either look at a situation or a relationship or a thought process, and specifically some actions that you could take that will help you uh, bring your best self to whatever that is,
Yeah.
rather than just, am I going to get XYZ? I have no interest in that. And I probably won't get that response for you because I don't care about that. I want
Well,
you to
yeah.
be, yeah.
And that's helpful. I had my youngest daughter has visited psychic mediums before, and
Mm.
I get so frustrated with it. It's like, this medium told me I'm not going to meet my soulmate and I'm not going to have children. It's like, what? I
Oh,
mean,
please.
I know exactly. It's like, this is not helpful.
Hilarious. Yeah, no.
Oh, and then she
Mm-mm.
also wanted $500 to clear out something so that
Of course. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So anyway,
Hmm.
I've always,
Run.
yeah.
Tell her, run. I've got a psychic message for you. Run the other way.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I love the work you're doing, because it's really about actualizing the self. It's not
Yes.
about a person being separate and telling you what to do or not to do or what direction to go.
No. And why would it's never that, because it's
Right.
really not me. I'm reflecting you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. In the highest sense,
Oh,
or a higher
wonderful.
sense. I don't want to say highest sense, because highest sense is even beyond that. So don't ever want anyone to think that I am showing you your soul, because that's not true. Your soul doesn't care about any of that, right? That's even behind that. This is kind of, how can you get your personality to move more in line with that? That would be this.
Okay.
I,
Right.
I wouldn't want to ever I'm not a guru. I don't claim to be that. I don't want to be that. I want to be a guide for you to be able to show up in a way that feels rewarding and purposeful, that could be in line with your spiritual perspective or goals or whatever that may be. And for you to then determine, based on whatever information you've gotten from me, how that sits with you in your soul. That's up to you,
Right.
not me.
Right. Right. Do you have a sense that where you are now
Mhm.
is like where you're supposed to be? Like you are fulfilling your mission
Mm,
on the planet now, and that everything that you went through with the crazy
mhm.
suicide incessant thoughts was all a part of your journey.
So I think that my purpose is whatever is right in front of me. And if that is being patient in traffic, then that's my purpose. If that's being blessed enough to sit with you in community and have this wonderful conversation, then that's my purpose. If it's to send an email and schedule a meeting for my boss, that's my purpose. Whatever is put in front of me and how I choose to respond to it is my purpose, because sometimes it's the simplest of things. Like when I'm bored, how dare I be bored? Like I need to correct that because I've been given this life, right? And I could have, at that moment in that car before that, I could have stepped out of this life, right? I've been given this life. And it's, to me, it's so much more those small moments and keeping yourself straight, in line, and aligned. It's those moments that are the defining moments, not the big ones. The big ones are easy. It's the little ones, keeping yourself, like when I catch myself being bored and I have
Hmm.
to redirect myself, say, how can I serve you?
Hmm.
I'm feeling bored right now. That's not right. How can I serve you?
The chop wood, carry water.
Yes.
Yeah, I really, really like that interpretation of purpose, because I think so many of us are, it's an ego trap. The
Mm-hmm.
ego traps us into, well, you know, we need to be doing something big and amazing. And if we're not doing something big and amazing, then somehow we're off track. And then just, God, show me, what is the big, amazing thing I'm supposed to do? What is the big, amazing thing I'm supposed to do? Just show me the big and
Right.
amazing thing I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And the answer is right there in front of you,
Right.
is to be fully alive in this moment.
And sometimes it's the thing that's most nagging you. Guess what? That's what God's telling you to do. Go fold the laundry,
Mm,
right? Or clean out your drawers, clean out your closet. Do, if you know, that little nagging thing, exercise 3 times a week, right? Take care of your physical, take care of your temple,
hmm.
right?
Hmm.
All of those things. Sometimes it's the nagging thing that you're like, God's
Right.
talking to you,
Right. That's not my purpose.
right?
It's like,
Well, yeah. Why don't
yeah,
we master the small things, and then maybe someday you'll get a big thing.
right,
But
right.
you're not even willing to humble yourself with your creator, in terms like I, and I'm talking to myself, I'm not
Right.
saying you, right?
Sure, I get it.
You are not willing to humble yourself with this, and you want me to give you something grand.
Right.
Humble yourself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it is a trap that the ego, it's a
Mhm.
trap that keeps us in our heads and keeps us judging ourselves and keep us feeling in shame and keeps us suffering. And it's
Mhm.
all nonsense. It's also silliness. So, and I agree with you. We are given this life. It's like, wow,
Mhm.
wow,
Mhm.
wow,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of coming full circle to the person who is wanting to end their life, and I'm seeing that that's not the thing to say to them. Like, you're given this
Right.
life. Wow, that's not the thing to say to them. But on the other side of it, it is the realization
Yes.
that, wow, this is an amazing ride. Even all of it, the pain, the suffering, the tragedy,
Right.
the trauma, the joy, the laughter, the creativity,
Yes.
all of it.
And I think when you get to a place where you, not that everyone has to have a mystical experience, but for me, when I had that moment of that mystical experience and I opened up to life really not being what I thought life was, right? There's this whole other energetic system going on. then that really opens you up to, okay, not those thoughts. So then now what do I want to think? What do I want to create? How can I participate with what's showing up as my purpose?
Mm.
How can I meet it in a way that leaves it better? How can I shape it? How can I, then it's really fun when you're walking and I walk past bushes and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, are those flowers talking to me? I can feel their resonance, right? And I say to God, oh, that's an awesome mystical experience. Thank you.
Oh,
But if I was busy thinking about, okay, what's the great grand thing that I'm going to do? Oh my gosh, I would have missed that beautiful gift that God gave me and the flowers speaking to me energetically. I'd have missed it.
wow. Right. Right.
So,
Right. Beautiful. Oh gosh, this has really been an interesting conversation. I love your story, and I just think your experience is so interesting. And I do think it's important to bring light to these dark moments. And there's a lot of darkness. There is a
mhm,
lot of darkness on the planet that we could let just kind of like overpower us. And I don't really believe the darkness has power, but the light has power. And we
mhm,
are the light to bring light to the darkness. So it is important to have these conversations about these times in our lives that are, may seem tragic.
mhm.
And the end of it all is that there's hope. So I do want to give you the last word. Anything else you want to share? Anything else you want that may be a part of your message that you may not have shared today? Anything I might have
Yeah.
missed?
I think if I was to leave people with kind of one last thought, it would be that the divine delights in you
Mhm.
and that we really are God's hands and we really are God's voice and we really are God in motion. And that when we will humble ourselves to recognize that we really can sense and experience viscerally how much the divine delights in us and share that with others.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yes, thank you so much. And I
Mm.
want to get all of your information and links so that I can put that when this
Sure.
podcast comes out so that people can know about the meditation lounge and the work that you're doing.
Awesome.
And yeah, and thank you so much for so generously sharing your experience, and just what you've done with it is so fascinating. And
Thank
I
you.
just know that this conversation is going out into the world at the airways, and those who have ears to hear will hear
Yes.
and
And
will
those
be
who have
blessed.
eyes to see.
Yes, that too. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anissa. And I
All
now
right.
close this spiritual forum.